Welcome to Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, where we discuss how to break into the performing arts industry for yourself or your child, teen, or young adult. Guests include professionals who are passionate and share my vision of helping talented individuals land professional representation and have successful careers in the arts. My name is Leesa Csolak, and I am the CEO and founder of Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, having helped hundreds of clients break into the performing arts business on stage, including Broadway, films, television, commercial work, and more. This podcast is supplemental to my groundbreaking online courses. For more information, check out all the way you can benefit from my courses, my how-to videos, my live webinars, my in-person seminars, and free guides. Go to lbctalent.com. My guest today is Glenn Cook. Hi, Glenn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited that you could be here on the podcast today. We've been talking for quite some time and sharing stories, and I feel like a lot of what you've experienced parallels what I've experienced. And some of the story is a little bit different, which is wonderful. And I think all of the listeners are going to learn a lot, especially those that live outside of the states in which most of this professional work is done. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and about your two kids who have been in the industry?
Sure. My name is Glenn Cook. I'm a freelance writer and photographer. Have worked in journalism for far longer than I care to admit. Live in Alexandria, Virginia. At the time that our kids were growing up, we were in Fairfax County, Virginia, which is about 4 hours outside New York. I have four kids. We're all in the arts. The oldest is a graphic designer. The youngest works um, or the second oldest works in a daycare. And then we have twins, Ben and Emma. And Ben and Emma are the entertainers in our family. We used to say that when they were growing up, we could not do dinner. We had to do dinner theater because every meal had to have some sort of performance by one of the four kids. They could not sit still through an entire dinner without performing.
I love that. I love that. So is this when you started to realize that they had an affinity for this? Like, how old were they when you started to realize this? Obviously during dinner, but when did that happen?
Well, it started basically from as soon as they could, but we enrolled Kate in her first dance class in when she was 3, and then Emma followed suit. The latter three children were born within a calendar year. And I write a blog that I call our reality show. And the reason is because Life with Us was a reality show, raising three
Right.
kids born within a year. But she enrolled at 3, and then we moved from North Carolina to Virginia, and then we enrolled Emma in a dance class along with Kate, and they loved it. And Ben was going to pursue gymnastics, and he enjoyed that. But then he decided he wanted to dance as well. So by the age of 5, we had all three of them in dance
Oh,
classes.
wow. Wow. That's busy already.
Yeah. Well, but the nice thing about it was it was a centralized location. We could get them to tuck and roll pretty easily, which made it much easier than if one was playing soccer and one was doing gymnastics and one was doing dance. We didn't
Sure.
have that circle. For us, it was an economy of scale we actually appreciated.
So, tell us a little bit about the journey with Ben and Emma from the beginning. Like, when did it become a serious thing? How did they first get involved in the professional side? Did one get involved first and then the other? Did they both get involved in the pro side at the same time? For those of you who are listening who don't know, Glenn's son, Ben, is very highly credited. And we'll talk about that and some of the things that you went through as a dad. He's still very much in the industry as an adult, which is a huge accomplishment to be able to be involved as a child and teen and then continue into adulthood. So he's to be commended for that. I know he does a lot of film and television, a lot of Broadway. It seemed Broadway is what brought him into the limelight. But let's talk about when that happened. Was there a transition? Was it something that surprised you? Were you seeking out professional rep for him? How did that all work for you?
Well, it's interesting because the first time that he got on stage it was a dance recital, and they did this thing called "Who Let the Frogs Out," and it was just it's a cute little number, et cetera, et cetera. And the audience erupted when he danced. And my wife and I looked at each other and went, uh-oh. And then when that show ended, we could not drag him off the stage. And he said, I feel like I'm home. He was 6, maybe. And he loved it. He
Hmm.
absolutely loved it. Kate and Emma liked it and they enjoyed it and it was part of their lives, but it wasn't their passion. Who expects
Sure.
a 7-year-old to have a passion?
Isn't that crazy when they're that young? Like a lot, I've seen a lot of that because have, as the listeners know, I used to own a performing arts school for many, many years, over 40 years. And just seeing that, you can see it at a young age. And I think parents recognize it. Like when you were sitting there and you watched that happen and you said that to your wife, were you like, was it like light bulb moment? Like there's something here. And I think in our heart of hearts, we know that, even though there are a lot of parents who will say, oh, well, I'm going to be biased because this is my child, and they'll talk like that to their friends and neighbors, but in your heart of hearts, I think people know. Did you feel that way at that moment, and especially when he started talking in that way?
Yes, because we knew something was different. I mean, it
Yeah.
was just one of those things where we knew automatically that there was
Hmm.
something different about it. And the thing is that when my wife and I both are involved in education, and one of the things we've always talked about with kids is that if they have a passion for something, allow them to pursue it, but they will get out of it what they put into it. And so, if this passion is something that drives them this way, then as parents, we need to make the accommodations. And so we were fortunate financially and from a work standpoint to be able to do that. And I know a lot of people aren't able to do that. And I feel very fortunate that we were. One reason we moved from North Carolina to Virginia was to give them more opportunities. And when this opportunity presented itself, and he danced that year, and then he danced the next year, and then he came to us and said, "I want to get a manager. I want to get an agent. I want to do this."
Really?
Yes,
He came to you. So where
he
did he, I mean, that's a young age. You're just at age 8, you're just starting. Most kids are just starting to be able to read and comprehend what that is, like what they're reading. And at that age, he's asking for an agent or a manager. Like, did he hear it from someone? Did someone
I
approach him?
I believe I mean, at the time, the person that ran the dance studio that he was at and had founded it, which it's Metropolitan School of the Arts, and they're a wonderful place. I think she said at some point, you could do this professionally. Well, that little light went off in his brain, and he was like, yes, I want to do this. This is what I want to do.
Mhm.
And he liked playing football. He liked doing other kid things, but at the same time, it was this is what I want to do.
Sure, you were lucky to be at a school with someone who understood the professional side. And I
Mhm.
think there are definitely listeners out there with children in the same situation. Maybe they're, singing on the fireplace hearth every, Saturday night for whoever's over for, for dessert that night at the neighbors and friends, whatever. And they're wondering what they should do. That was really lucky to be around somebody that was in the industry, because I think you do have to seek out professionals in the business to give
Mhm.
you an opinion, because you don't know as a parent and you could be missing an opportunity for your child. So it certainly is important. So you were lucky to be with that level of professional right from the beginning. It was the
Right.
school. Did they employ a lot of people who had been in the industry, who worked in the industry?
Yes, they did, and they still do today. And it's been one of the nicest things has been seeing Emma and Ben both come back to teach there now. But they always have worked really hard at if you want to do this, if you want to immerse yourself in doing this, we're going to provide you with training. If you want to do this as a hobby, we're going to allow you to do it as a hobby. These are what our expectations are, and this is what we want you to do when you're participating in class. Your level of commitment to it and your level of enjoyment and what you take out of it is what's most important.
With various dance and performing arts schools, there are some that are more concert dance leaning and others that are more competitive dance leaning. Was he in a school that offered competitive dance training, or was he in more of a like technical type of school?
He was more what MSA has always emphasized is more performance and technical over competitive.
Hmm.
They don't compete. They do shows over the course of a year, and then they come up to their annual recital, which is always sort of mixed musical theater with dance to varying degrees, and
Okay.
more so now than it did then. But they've always been about the technical end of things,
Sure.
and it's about the joy of performance and about the joy of giving
I
back.
love that. Yeah, I love that. And I'm not saying that a competitive school isn't technical. They absolutely are. And there's a lot of competition
Right.
dancers that do extremely well in the professional industry, obviously. But I know it's different for a parent. Where do you put your child? Do you spend the time in that competition scene, or do you spend it more in, like you're saying, performance for the sake of performance? Interesting. So did your school have any, were they part of the transition to getting him an agent or a manager, or was that something you and your wife had to take on your own?
To a degree, because the founder knew a local manager who worked in the area. We live outside, like I said, outside DC. And so while there are filming opportunities and there are opportunities for performance in the DC area, especially, and then there are filming opportunities in Baltimore, which is about an hour away from us, it's still not, I mean, it's not a rigorous professional scene.
Hmm.
It got to us with the question of, do you want to try to get an agent? Do you want to try to get a manager? And that's where we had to start learning about this process and learning about the differences between a manager and an agent and who could help and who could not. At the time, there was a woman by the name of Linda Townsend who still works in this area. And we had to audition him in the basement, and he had to sing, dance, and then read. And so the folks at MSA helped him get prepared for that
Hmm.
audition
Hmm.
management. And he's saying, I can do that. And she signed him right away and
Hmm.
then started sending him out for stuff.
So that experience, now you're signed. Now your daughters are still dancing. So
Mhm.
you have three others at home and you have Ben now signed. Is that correct?
One child lived in North Carolina, but yes,
Okay.
we had Kate, Emma, and Ben were all living with us, and then Nicholas was visiting us in the summers.
Understood. Okay. So now you are getting auditions. And at the time, self-tapes were not really a big deal thing back then. So give us a little bit of an idea of what that experience was like getting him to auditions. How did that work for you guys?
The first audition he went to, he was at the Kennedy Center for a Debbie Allen show, and he thought he was going to do really well, and he was real cocky, and he was all these different things, and didn't happen. Got cut.
Mhm.
And was devastated by it. And the question was, for us, it was one of those litmus tests. Okay,
Hmm.
you've been cut. What does that mean? What do you need to work on? You want to continue doing this? His response was, of course, I want to
Yeah.
continue doing this. And that inner resilience, I think, was something that, he was born with it in many respects, and we just encouraged it, but he had it. And it was, nope, I'm not going to quit this
Hmm.
just because
Hmm.
it didn't go well. And so his second audition, believe it or not, just his second audition, he booked A Christmas Carol at Ford's Theater's Tiny Tim.
Little bit of a rite of passage for young boys if they have those shows going on in their areas for sure.
Exactly. And so that Christmas season, he performed in that. And then he landed young Macduff in the Folger theater production of Macbeth. And it was directed by Penn and Teller, co-directed with another man. And went from that, then nothing for 6 months. Then from that, got Christmas Carol again, got another show. And then at the last day of that show, he got found out that he had an audition for Ragtime.
Ah, okay. Now, how old was he at this point?
He had just turned 11.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I didn't realize it was Ragtime. So that was his first big show.
He had
Was
done an
that?
audition for Gavroche in Les Mis,
Okay.
which
Okay.
we had to go to New York.
Okay.
And that was another experience in which he bombed.
Let me ask you this because I think sometimes, and I have clients all over the country and out of the country, actually, on five continents. But what happens sometimes is there's pressure right? That the kid feels, maybe not even coming from the parent, usually not, because they're going to put pressure on themselves because they're usually type A type kids, who want to obviously put their best foot forward and do well in those moments. Now they know that you guys as parents have taken the time, the money, put in this effort to travel to this, this big city, this other state, this other place, and they don't just have the pressure of like, okay, I need to do well in the room with the dance, singing, acting, but now they feel this pressure of we traveled all this way. Did that enter into it at all? Because that's happened to some people where they're coming from Chicago, they land in New York and they have this moment. You know how the auditions go.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
only in there for like 5 to 15 minutes, whatever it is. And it's a lot, to try to balance. So how was that for you guys?
Well, I mean, for us, it was a combination of things. I don't think that I think the pressure on him came from the lack of knowledge that we had. And the lack of knowledge that we had was, we didn't know that you're going to go in and sing 16 bars or 32 bars. And
Hmm.
then we found out, oh yeah, you've got this audition tomorrow in New York City for this. You should go do it. Yeah, do you have 16 bars? Do you have 32 bars of
Hmm.
this song from this show? And we
Hmm.
didn't have access to somebody who could do it for us. So
Hmm.
we desperately tried to cobble together something and then went up and he did the audition. And like I said, it didn't go well. The acting went fine, but the singing was terrible. He would tell you that to this day. And I will
Yeah.
never forget riding the train up with him and watching him practice and thinking, this is not going to go well. And then thinking to myself, it doesn't matter that it's not going to go well. It matters that he gets to experience it. And that has been sort of a guidepost for us the whole time. Every experience, you learn something from it. And every opportunity that you have to learn something, you take it because if you can learn something from it, it's something else you can add to your toolbox. You have an experience that you would not have otherwise had. And for him, it worked out beautifully. He took that experience and said, okay, I don't really like to sing, but if I have to sing, I'll sing. And at that point, that's when he originally did not want to do the ragtime audition because he was fearful of the singing. But he also was faced with what he considered to be a prolonged period of unemployment. He was in fourth grade,
At the age of what?
11, and he was in fourth grade at the time.
Yeah.
And I will never forget it. He's like, Dad, I've got to go do this audition. And I was like, why
Hmm.
is that? And he says, because my grades suck when I'm unemployed.
Oh,
And
that's so
he
cute.
he was that kid that, you just he if he had free time on his hands, he would waste it. But
Hmm.
if he was scheduled to the nth degree, he would
Yeah.
maximize it.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in the industry like that. Hmm.
And some kids are that way. And he was, and all the way up, I would say through, even early adulthood, he starts getting itchy when he's not doing something that he considers to be creative or productive.
Yeah. So did you guys end up adding a vocal coach to your team to help you with that? Because I know my experience was a lot of that same thing where you get the audition the day before and then you have to learn a new song or you have to learn a new something. And we were lucky enough to have a team of people around us, because I had the performing arts school who I could call and say, listen, can I bring my son over after rehearsal or after a practice at 9 o'clock at night? And can you teach him this song real quick? Or can you give us the 16 bars? This is what he wants to sing. Or can you do it over the phone? Like, what can we do to make this happen? And there was a lot of that little bit of juggling, but it was so much fun. And again, my kids absolutely loved it and adored it and lived for it. So I knew that this was an okay thing to do. Most parents wouldn't do that, like run out at 9 o'clock at night to go to, the high school music director's house to learn a song that he needs for the next day. But without that, doing the best you can is still amazing because it gave him, like you're saying, this opportunity to see this other world, to see what it could be, to see what's out there, to then go, okay, the next time I go, I'm going to be able to do A, B, C, and D. But did you guys end up adding a vocal coach to his team, or what ended up happening with you guys?
We added, fortunately, MSA, the dance studio, also
Hmm.
had private music lessons as well. So we were able to add a vocal coach for him. And especially as in between the Les Mis audition and then what became the ragtime audition. So he had it. He could do 16 bars. And I think, and was trying to remember what the song was. It was something from Music Man. But on the last day of the Heavens Are Hung in Black run at Ford's Theater, which had reopened the theater for its 200th anniversary. So this is 2009. He had the audition for Ragtime, and it was for the understudy for Little Boy for the Kennedy Center run. And we took a tour of the Capitol that morning when because Harry Reid, who was at the time was the head of the Senate, had seen the show and invited the cast to come take a private tour of the Capitol, which
Oh,
was
very cool. That's
crazy,
very cool.
crazy
Yeah.
cool. And he had a chance to do that. And then we went and had lunch, and he's like, okay, I'll do the audition. It's like, okay, if you don't, it's not a big deal, but not a big deal to me.
Hmm.
And he said, well, what is your advice? And I said, kick ass, take names, and have fun. And believe it or not, that's become a mantra for us. That child is 26 years old, and he says, I've got to audition for something. And I say, kick ass, take names, and have fun. He walked in, he walked out. He said, they say it's for the understudy. I was like, okay. I said, how'd you do? How do you feel? And what did you learn? And he says, well, I did pretty well. I feel pretty good. And I learned that there are some very nice people in that room. And by the time we got to the parking lot, we got a call saying they'd like to offer him the understudy role. And one piece of advice that we'd always given him was you have to be polite and you have to make connections, connect to the people that are at the
Mm-hmm.
casting table. Even if you don't feel like it's gone well, even no matter what, you walk up to each person and you say, thank you for the opportunity and extend your hand. And I said,
Hmm.
that's just polite. That's just how you do it. It's just
Sure.
about being polite. And so that's what he did and got the understudy role. Had 6 weeks in which we had to navigate getting him to the Kennedy Center every day from our suburban Fairfax County house, trying to convince his school that, that he could do his schoolwork, quote unquote, and everything else. And we managed to get that done. And then he did, I think it was 8 weeks, but one of the things that we had to do with his school was have him do some sort of a project, the project-based learning. He had to do a project related to the show. And we had him interview other cast members about what it was like to be an understudy. What did they learn from being an understudy? What did they gain from being an understudy? And as it turns out, I mean, he interviewed people who were Broadway veterans. And so he walked away from the experience understanding what that was and what that role was. And so when the show ended and they said it was going to be potentially transferring, and they said, if you want to audition for it, you can. We're going to take most of the original cast, but if you want to audition for it, you can. But just realize what kind of commitment that it is. And we said, okay, and asked him if he wanted to. And he's like, of course. And he auditioned, got the understudy role, and made his debut in the role on Broadway.
That's amazing. So that was his Broadway debut. Yes, that's amazing. I think you guys have handled everything so well because there are parents who get too emotional about these things, like they don't understand that, what's really going on the other side of the table, the responsibilities of directors and producers and what they have to do. So there's a piece of that. And as a parent, I find when I'm working with a lot of my clients who have children doing this or wanting to do this, they don't even understand how we get a manager or an agent, how we go through that process. It's not like calling up, you go into you Google doctors because you need a doctor because you have a toothache, you need a dentist, and you just pick one and you call them and they go, yeah, sure, we'll fit you in today. Like that is not the world that we live in, right? So
Right.
that piece of it is something that, it's kind of a reality check when you get involved in this that it's not as easy as it seems. Your story is like, okay, super talented little boy, very passionate about what he's doing, very comfortable in this space and going through this process. But at the end of the game, most parents would have had a difficult time with an understudy role in that situation and him not even having one chance to go on. Like when you think about what goes on in high schools and junior highs, if they want to understudy, let's say Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz that they're doing at the junior high, that parent is in there, demanding that their kid has at least 3 shows or whatever, and it's not, that's not this world. It's not like public school at all. Do you want to
Well,
speak on any of that?
yeah, I mean, part of that was the reason why he didn't go on in DC was because it was one of our first encounters with a stage parent who was insistent that her son go on for every role that he was able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Broadway run was negotiated, and Ben became very good friends with the young man, and he's a great kid. But his at the time, what ended up happening was when we negotiated the Broadway contract, was that he go on as the alternate twice at least twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was the plan. Then, of course, unfortunately, the show, which was such a beautiful show and received 7 Tony nominations, closed very early.
Mm-hmm.
And it opened in November and closed in January.
Let's move on because Ben is so well known for, you can say, the next show that he landed.
Well, what was
Um,
funny was this was also running sort of in parallel. That was he was one of the first set of 10 or 11-year olds to audition for Billy Elliot. And he was in that first cattle call of kids going up. And then he did that audition, and they said, yay, he's got some potential. Come back in 6 months. Yay,
mhm.
he's got some potential. Come back in 6 months.
Yeah, he was in the funnel.
He was in the funnel.
Hmm.
And it was interesting at the time because when we found out that Ragtime was going to close, um, I said to him, why don't you write an email to the casting director from Billy Elliot, which is Nora Brennan, and say to Nora, hey, I'm doing this show. I'm doing this one performance. Could you come see it? And he's like, well, do I? Yeah, no, son.
Typical boy.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
typical boy. And I
Yeah.
said, but if you do it and she comes, then it's an opportunity for you.
Hmm.
If she doesn't, okay, well then that gives you another indicator as far as how they feel. And she came. Nora was very gracious. She came. She saw it. And at the end of it, she went backstage and she congratulated him and then said, I think I also want to bring you in for Michael. And so she brought him in during the next round of Michael auditions. And that's when he got ensemble understudy Michael for the Broadway run. Meanwhile, still trying out for Billy. So he did the Billy ensemble Michael track for 15 months and was training the entire time. And he went through multiple Billy auditions and then finally was cast to be a Billy on the tour, or they said he was going to be cast as Billy. And then they announced the Broadway closing, and then they said, well, we want you to go out as Michael on the tour and train for Billy and go in. So he went out as Michael, got hurt, had his first major injury, and then after rehab, debuted in the last day of June of 2012, and did it for a year.
Nice. Wow. So he was on tour. So was that a domestic tour or did it go outside of the
It
country
was
as well?
a domestic tour. He
It was a
went
domestic tour.
he went to 40 states and the 5 major cities in Canada. He
Oh,
did
okay.
Canada as well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that must have been an experience. As a parent, can you talk a little bit about the actual logistics of what you and your wife had to deal with all of that? Because I think that would be very interesting to everyone who's listening, who's a parent with a child wanting to do this.
You have decisions as parents to make the entire time. The question, you're balancing other children, you're balancing other things in your life, and you're trying to say, will this work? Will this not work? What do we do here? What do we do there? And when the opportunity for him came to do the tour, we were like, okay, and it took some internal conversations because we had, Emma was at home and we had Kate at home as well. And Kate was going through some struggles at the time that she's since overcome. We're having to pour all this energy into him doing this back and forth between New York struggle. But
Hmm.
we found some parents and we found people that were helping us out part-time. We were helping them out part-time to do that juggle. And then we were fortunate that we were able to get somebody who would go out with him on tour and serve as his guardian. That was for us. And the way we did it was we made sure that we paid his guardian out of his salary because we were trying to make this as much a zero sum game as possible. We did that the
Hmm.
entire time that he had an apartment in New York. He paid
Hmm.
for the apartment because we were trying to avoid that imbalance, especially with having other kids. To
Yes.
know no, he's paying for this. His out of the money that's coming into this. He's not just going to get to spend all the money like it's not his allowance. So we got a guardian who is still a member of our extended family to this day. His name is Gino Murphy, and he is one of the kindest human beings I've ever known in my life. And he went out with him for 18 months. Jill and I made the stated goal that we were not going to go more than 2 weeks without seeing him. So fortunately, we were able to negotiate in the contract that they would pay for one flight every month. And that was part of the negotiation. By this time, he no longer was working with just a manager, but he had been adopted by CESD as an agent.
Agent. Hmm.
And so the agent helped negotiate that. And so we were able to do that back and forth. And so for that 18 months, one of the two of us, I'd say probably most of the time it was me, would go out for 3 or 4 days every 2 weeks. We would take the cost of one of the flights and the production would pay for the other cost.
Nice. Yeah. Can I just interject for everyone? CESD is one of the top bicoastal agencies in the country, and they're very, very much at the high level of this industry. So that is pretty amazing that he was that young and signed with a bicoastal agent, because that is the goal that most people have when they get in, to be with a top agency. So that's their job, to negotiate those kind of things and try to make things easier for the client.
Yeah, and they've been wonderful to work with over the
Hmm.
so yeah, he did Billy Elliot for 3 years.
Thanks for watching the Making It Happen a Career in the Performing Arts podcast. Tune in next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern for part 2 of my interview with Glenn Cook. If you'd like to connect with Glenn or his son Ben or Emma, follow them on socials or visit Glenn's page at glenncook.substack.com/stagedad. His series is designed to help parents understand what it takes to support a child who wants to pursue performing as a career. Need more information? Visit lbctalent.com and follow me on socials at Leesa Csolak _LBC Talent. By sharing our stories, we can help other talented individuals land the career of their dreams. If you're enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe below and hit the bell for notifications.